and take you out of queue. Whew.
We're live over there.
Anytime you start that, it'll go.
It's time for Post-Orthodoxy, the show about changing our minds.
Yeah, baby.
With your hosts, Dark and Ainsley Sevier.
Maybe what they believe about reality isn't all of reality?
What?
I know, right?
We're on a mission to have a better time with more people more often.
The question is, how do you get there?
Post-Orthodoxy explores strongly held beliefs, how those belief systems divide or connect people, and what might be found beyond those reality bubbles.
Keep calm. Don't lose your head.
I've got a piece of track back here with me because I got anxiety about doing this. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to KBMF 102.5 FM LP, buteamericaradio.org/stream. Thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon. My name is Ainsley Sevier, and with me in the station today is Citizen DJ Dark Sevier.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be back at American
Woo!
Radio.
We're back. We have multiple pieces of equipment and power cords and a camera. And for those of you just listening on 102.5 FM or buteamericaradio.org/stream, you're just going to get the lovely audio-only version of our show this afternoon. We're really grateful to you guys for tuning in. And some of you might be participating in the live stream this afternoon on facebook.com/AinsleyHelen, where we're live video streaming and we'll be taking comments and questions throughout the show. And some of you might be participating this afternoon on twitch.tv/theseviers, where we also take comments and questions throughout the show. And we really appreciate everybody's involvement. We'll be doing our best on this very sensitive subject to include everybody's thoughts and opinions, because it's definitely an issue that affects all of us, and that is the religion of the mask.
Oh, I thought you were talking about monetizing the eschaton.
No, that's the second hour.
Okay.
I named the show The Religion of the Mask this week, and one of our friends pointed out that he felt like that was a sloppy title. Which I
It
thought was
might be
kind of interesting.
polarizing.
Polarizing, for sure. I guess I have a personal perspective of religion and spirituality that is that spirituality and a personal spiritual relationship and or a personal relationship with the God or gods of your choosing can be a really healthy thing.
Yes.
Religion rarely is, in my personal experience and study of the world.
Sure.
Organized, dogmatic religion, we have to be able to differentiate between people who practice Christianity and the religion of Christianity itself as it is expressed in the modern world.
Yeah, there's a lot of facets.
There are a lot of facets. Wow, this. So we sanitize the microphones in between every person, and it's kind of a lot for me.
You want a sweet tart or something?
No, it makes breathing hard. I have to breathe over here and then talk. But yay, safety. So Greg Hanley is tuning in with us this afternoon.
Frank Bank was watching.
Thanks for listening, guys. If you have any articles or memes, you can send me memes. You can send us articles in the link.
On the theme?
On the theme. I want to know what research you've done.
Right. Maybe, so we were going to do the show last week because we could already see the sort of the schism, right? It seems to have schismed along. Like you might have a crack in the glass, and then when it breaks, the break follows, finds that crack and exacerbates it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of the mask conversation that I've been watching seems to have schismed along political lines, which is very odd for a medical phenomenon.
Right.
Abortion is one of those things. It should be.
Well, we don't even
maybe
think of abortion as a medical thing. We think of it as a political thing.
It should be a health issue, but we made it a political issue. So the mask should not be a political issue, but I'm watching a sort of dogmatism along the lines of yay or nay.
Mm-hmm.
Just another schism that we have amongst, where we get to fight amongst ourselves. We watched Gangs of New York a few days ago, and just before the riot happened, the aristocrats or ambling around playing pool in their mansion. And one of the guys says, "Oh, I'm not worried about it. You can always get one half of the poor to fight the other, and then it'll take care of the problem."
Mm-hmm.
Seems like we do that a lot with our politics, and now we're doing it with our health issue pretty actively, pretty extremely. I would like to come from the perspective of looking at how we're getting our information. What is it about this that it's a health issue and it's high risk because we're talking about life and death. So it's exacerbated. Maybe people are rushing to share their perspective and to join a perspective. There's a lot that we want to talk about, but I wanted to zoom out myself and look at how these things come about. How does it come about that we turn on each other in our own country when there's a line I read today from something on Facebook, Robert Anton Muslim Fan Club page. Part of it says whether or not you believe in the global conspiracy or the virus is going to wipe us out. One thing that has remained the same is the passion for protecting one another. So the perspective is whether you are a virulent not mask wearer and think that there's some conspiracy to take all your freedoms.
Or brainwash you.
That is somebody who is concerned about protecting himself and others. Protecting
from brainwashing,
from freedom being opposed. And the people who are doing it for health reasons really have a passion for protecting one another. So the motivation seems to be the same on all fronts if you can zoom out. And yet we're not recognizing people's motivations. We're getting hung up on this sort of partisan divide thing that became medical. So I wanted to start today with a clip from one of my favorite documentarians, a guy named Adam Curtis, BBC chap. He's a bit of a contrarian when dealing with the historical narrative.
Before we dive into the Adam Curtis clip, because that's going to try to help set the tone for. It's so nice using a real microphone where you don't have to yell the whole time. We've been recording at home for the past couple of months, and yelling into a microphone shared between us, and so that was not the best.
I get to be calm, cool, and collected today.
We get to display level-headed emotional range. So we're talking about masks. We're going to be talking about. We're not going to be trying to decide if you should or should not wear one. That's up to you to decide.
That's not the point. Yeah.
We are going to be sharing data around the efficacy of masks, various types of masks, ingress and egress out of masks, and different information
There's a lot of information
scientists are sharing about whether it's healthy or not. A lot of people think there's only data on one side.
Or once they find data that supports their perspective, they need to look no further because they've been validated. And I found the thing. Science says I'm right.
We are also going to be talking about COVID-19 censorship and whether or not we should be able to investigate information outside of government and healthcare organization approved sources.
It's a good conversation to have about. That should be its own show, I think. But I think
we definitely do have to do a show about censorship and
the slippery slope.
We're going to be talking about germ theory versus terrain theory and how all of modern Western medicine is based on a theory by Louis Pasteur that is not actually scientifically accurate anymore.
He didn't even like it when he died.
He debunked it.
On his deathbed, he sort of said, yeah, maybe not so much.
I had it wrong.
But a lot of our medical orthodoxy is built upon germ theory of disease. So we'd like to explore an alternative theory, which is called terrain theory.
We're going to be using the strongly held beliefs that our friends and loved ones have about whether you should or should not wear a mask to discuss a variety of things going on in the universe today.
Yeah, and then later on we'll talk about monetizing the eschaton.
If we must.
Yeah. So this is a clip from a documentary called Hypernormalization. It's by a BBC chap named Adam Curtis. This is almost a 3-hour-long documentary. We're going to play 5 minutes from it. This was produced in 2016. A lot of the information in this was from 2014, which makes it interesting because he's talking often about Russia and about Donald Trump and about Russia.
But it was before Russia, it was before he was even running for president.
Yeah, he was already diving into the story before Trump was nominated. We'll put a link to the documentary trailer on our Facebook page. Otherwise, it's called Hypernormalization. It is available out there.
It's free on YouTube.
It's available.
It's available.
So I'm going to play a 5-minute clip, and then we're going to come back and talk about it. If you're listening or watching on Facebook, you can join in the dialogue if you want to
leave your
questions or comments about what you're about to hear.
I know very few people who don't have a strong opinion about whether you should wear a mask or not.
People who don't have a strong opinion?
Probably 2 people that don't have a strong opinion.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go ahead and play this and see how it goes. You're going to miss the gorgeous visuals, but we're going to just deal with the text.
Fantastic.
So much of the news this year has been hopeless, depressing, and above all, confusing. To which the only response is, oh dear.
Why can't I hear it?
But what this film is going to suggest
I can't hear
is
it
that
from here.
this response has become a central part of a new system of political control. And to understand how this is happening, you have to look to Russia, and to a man called Vladislav Surkov, who is a hero of our time. Surkov is one of President Putin's advisors, and has helped him maintain his power for 15 years. But he has done it in a very new way.
Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
He came originally from the avant-garde art world, and those who have studied his career say that what Surkov has done is import ideas from conceptual art into the very heart of politics. His aim is to undermine people's perception of the world, so they never know what is really happening. Surkov turned Russian politics into a bewildering, constantly changing piece of theatre. He sponsored all kinds of groups, from neo-Nazi skinheads to liberal human rights groups. He even backed parties that were opposed to President Putin. But the key thing was that Surkov then let it be known that this was what he was doing, which meant that no one was sure what was real or fake. As one journalist put it, it's a strategy of power that keeps any opposition constantly confused, a ceaseless shape-shifting that is unstoppable because it's indefinable. Which is exactly what Surkov is alleged to have done in the Ukraine this year. In typical fashion, as the war began, Surkov published a short story about something he called non-linear war. A war where you never know what the enemy are really up to, or even who they are. The underlying aim, Surkov says, is not to win the war, but to use the conflict to create a constant state of destabilized perception in order to manage and control. But maybe we have something similar emerging here in Britain. Everything we're told by journalists and politicians is confusing and contradictory. Of course, there is no Mr. Surkov in charge, but it's an odd, non-linear world that plays into the hands of those in power. British troops have come home from Afghanistan, but nobody seems to know whether it was a victory or whether it was a defeat. Aging disc jockeys are prosecuted for crimes they committed decades ago, while practically no one in the City of London is prosecuted for the endless financial crimes that are being revealed there. In Syria, we are told that President Assad is the evil enemy, but then his enemies turn out to be even more evil than him, so we bomb them. And by doing that, we help keep Assad in power. But the real epicenter of this non-linear world is the economy. And the closest we have to our own shape-shifting, postmodern politician is George Osborne. He tells us proudly that the economy is growing, but at the same time, wages are going down. He says he is cutting the deficit, but then it's revealed that the deficit is going up. But the dark heart of this shape-shifting world is quantitative easing. The government is insisting on taking billions of pounds out of the economy through its austerity programme. Yet at the very same time, it is pumping billions of pounds into the economy through quantitative easing, the equivalent of £24,000 for every family in Britain. But it gets even more confusing, because the Bank of England have admitted that those billions of pounds have not gone where they are supposed to. A vast amount of the money has actually found its way into the hands of the wealthiest 5% in Britain. It has been described as the biggest transfer of wealth to the rich in recent documented history. It could be a huge scandal, comparable to the greedy oligarchs in Russia. A ruthless elite siphoning off billions of public money. But nobody seems to know. It sums up the strange mood of our time, where nothing really makes any coherent sense. We live with a constant vaudeville of contradictory stories that makes it impossible for any real opposition to emerge, because they can't counter it with a coherent narrative of their own. And it means that we as individuals become ever more powerless, unable to challenge anything, because we live in a state of confusion and uncertainty, to which the response is, oh dear. But that's what they want you to say.
So that is from Adam Curtis's documentary, Hypernormalization, a little 5-minute clip on Sarkov. I have some information on him we can get into later, but Sarkov was basically Vladimir Putin's wizard. What I found interesting listening to this recently, because I haven't watched that trailer since this virus scenario has happened, is everything he was talking about with the 2008 financial bust and what was happening with quantitative easing in England seems to be exactly what's happening to us since the virus has started. So trillions of dollars have just gone off somewhere, but they can't afford to make sure that the people that they've told to stay away from work can't afford to live.
Right.
So it's the same playbook. It seems like play by play is the same playbook that happened in 2008. It's disturbing. And what I like about that documentary is Adam Curtis sort of wryly and nonchalantly lays out the style of consent manipulation that is going on. And once you sort of see it or hear it, it makes it easier to understand how you yourself are being manipulated.
People don't like to hear that.
No, people don't like to think that they're discerning curators of their own reality.
And I know you and I do our best to be discerning curators of our reality, and so do many people that we know.
I get brainwashed all the time.
And
I'm constantly
I grew up brainwashed. I was brainwashed for the first 27 years of my life.
Well, that's one thing that I think was behind your and my motivation to do this, is having been brainwashed.
Having been in a super strict group where you have to follow the rules or else.
There's no questioning the rules is the thing. So if you question the rules, then you are flirting with the devil, basically. And I see that in a non-religious sense, but in a secular sense here, where to even question the dogma of the day is to be of the devil or the realm of the devil.
You obviously don't care about people with autoimmune diseases if you're questioning.
If you're questioning with the
whether you should wear a mask or not. You can't. I think that was honestly, to use a hip term, rather triggering for me.
What was?
And I don't get triggered very often.
What was triggering?
When you were talking with a friend of yours about, in preparation for this show, sharing articles and research that we were working on and facts that we were out hunting for, and this lady friend of yours said basically people should be wearing masks and there is no discussion.
There's no discussion.
And that phrase, there is no discussion, should be a huge red flag to anybody that hears it or thinks it or says it.
The irony is that we've made several posts talking about the quote-unquote debate or the religion or the fundamentalism of the mask scenario. This is not on one side or the other. It's just the phenomena of the discussion of the mask. And even if I'm saying, let's talk about the fundamentalism around this, people will say there's no reason to, which is ironic, and I find mildly amusing.
Why is it ironic? Let's break it down.
Because they're saying there's no discussion on the fundamentalism of the thing. I'm talking about the fundamentalism and people's decision to have taken a side and in the discussion, and maybe we can talk about that, and all they see is that I said something about the mask, and they do the thing that I wanted
you're
to talk
talking about, which
yes.
is, we're trying to point out, and this goes back to what my friend Rob was talking about earlier when I called it a religion, and he said he was surprised because calling everybody's strong opinions about mask wearing a religion inherently brings up personal biases. I'm just surprised because you are usually careful to avoid syntax that puts people on the defensive. And
Not this week.
I hadn't thought about it being something that would put people on the defensive until he said that, because having been in a black and white, follow the rules or else religious group,
Mm-hmm.
I've moved to a point where I understand and respect people's spiritual practices while also knowing that that's different from being in a follow the rules or else religious group. And I'm not saying the all must wear a mask or no one should wear a mask battle cries are like a wonderful Buddhist practice. I'm not saying that those battle cries are like my friends who go to a Christian church that welcome LGBTQ plus community with open arms. I'm not saying these battle cries around mask wearing are like you waking up and doing personal devotions with God in the morning. I'm saying they are like these extreme groups. You know, over 25% of the US is a part of one of these groups where you have to follow the rules or you won't get to heaven, and you will in fact be ostracized by people that love you because they think they should do that because they love you.
Yes.
So when if you are ever in a group where someone says there can be no discussion, that is a cult.
There should probably be discussion. That's my first thought.
You must absolutely discuss things that people say you can't talk about that.
We obviously need to discuss this now.
What was our quote from our two-part discussion about the racist drug policies in the US? If you want to know who your overlords are, just figure out who you're not allowed to question.
Right.
Who or what.
Right. So in this, I can tell a couple of personal anecdotes, and I'll share my personal perspective. So my perspective on the mask, I have bias, and I'm going to relate my bias.
Okay.
Like I said, I was raised in a cult, and I don't take lightly to people pressuring me into doing something unless I want to know why I'm doing it, and I want to be informed about why I'm doing it. That is a layer. Another layer is I don't know if anybody really knows what's going on right now. We're getting a lot of conflicting information. That's why I wanted to play that Adam Curtis clip.
I think that's an important thing to say
There's
again.
a lot
Say
of
it again.
conflicting information.
We probably don't know what the right thing to do is, but we really want to know what the right thing to do is.
There may be some people who know undoubtedly the correct process. I feel that there is another story going out. There's other stories going out. For example, one thing that I see all the time in folks that are pro-anti-mask in their debates is that the the Surgeon General, the CDC, and to some degree the WHO,
as well as
Fauci, in February said it's ridiculous to wear a mask if you're not infected.
You don't need to wear a mask unless you are a healthcare professional or someone who's actually sick.
And
they all
wearing
said
a
that.
mask, they all said that. They said wearing a mask without fully adequately knowing how to use the mask will put you in more of a danger because you're going to be readjusting and you're going to be touching your face more than normal because you're not used to wearing a mask. So it's probably a danger. Now that was an across the board perspective of intra-agencies saying, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't wear a mask. You don't need to do
And the
that.
CDC and the WHO and Dr. Fauci, at least, are all people who have spent decades.
They're not new to the game.
Decades studying virology and personal protective
So
equipment.
if you watch Fauci, when he's talking about that, it is that sort of, geez, do I really have to say this kind of attitude from somebody who's been in the field for a long time.
Right.
So after he says this, then a month later, they all reverse their position. So now I haven't heard why that position was reversed. I haven't heard because this is a very specific disease. We've had other coronaviruses. We've had other things with micron size of the entity. I don't know why they reversed, why it was common medical knowledge until it wasn't.
Suddenly, never mind, everyone wear a mask.
So I find that perceptually destabilizing.
What does that mean?
This is what Adam Curtis is talking about. They're saying, don't wear a mask, and so everybody goes, oh, well, let's not wear a mask. And then the same people say, wear a mask.
Which
So
makes
then,
you feel worried about who to trust.
or you get to, both sides get to pick the same person to justify their claim. And we have this really wonderful built-in schism where we can just find everybody, and we all know the same preferences. We're all working off the same sources.
Oh, well, but my version of the CDC said we don't need to wear masks.
My version is a month newer. So I find that, and I don't know, I'm not a medical scientist, I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm just that guy you knew from high school. So, but I do want to know why suddenly, during the course of this virus, common knowledge for practice around mask wearing was abandoned for another practice.
Flip-flopped.
I find that interesting. I don't know. I'm always looking for more information. So I know that I've heard some good information, and I know that I've heard some bad information. I don't always know which one is which, though, as I'm going through it. So that's why I have, so if I'm going to go to the grocery store, this is where I'm at. If I'm going to go to the grocery store, hold on, I have to go back a step further. We haven't had really good science on, Ainsley, ingress and egress. The idea, is the mask protecting you, or is the mask protecting other people? We haven't had a lot of discussion in the research that I found.
And a lot, well, and
The premise is that you're wearing it for other people.
Sometimes.
That's the general premise.
That's the...
Do it for everybody else.
That's the virtue signal that people spread around to say, I'm a good citizen because I wear masks for you.
Right.
I put myself in an inconvenient position because I care about you.
So most people are not wearing N95 masks, which is not completely going to protect you or protect other people from the virus.
We're going to do a whole section on mask science.
A lot of people are wearing their kids' worn out underwear as a mask.
Or a sock.
It's weird.
Or shirts that they bought from Goodwill and turned into masks.
So those masks, to me, are more a virtue signal, as like, look at me, I'm on your team, than they are actually in any kind of scientific effectiveness. And when we talk about masks, there's a range of masks.
Well, virtue signaling is not a derogatory term. Someone might hear that and feel that the conversation is being derogatory towards people that wear masks to make other people feel good. Virtue signaling is just something that you do because of what other people will think about you. You're not...
Or for what do you call that? Just to be friendly with people.
Yeah.
To say, here's my signal that I'm down with you.
I care about you.
Yes, I care about you.
And I know if I wear a mask, you will think I care about you.
Right.
Right. Yes, there have been... So we have a lot of segments to cover.
Okay.
And I know that the further along we go, people are going to bring up their opinions and experiences.
We have comments already. Do you want to, is that what you're leading towards?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Sam has commented on our Facebook live stream with his current personal theory on the mask.
Great.
Okay, here's what I think. The WHO is stating that there isn't clear evidence the coronavirus doesn't have airborne transmission. It might actually just be floating around.
There's evidence. Oh, say that again.
So it has some double negatives, so I'm reinterpreting. Basically, according to Sam, which I haven't looked this up myself, but according to Sam, the WHO is stating right now that COVID might be airborne.
It might be, but we don't know.
We don't know.
Okay.
It might. We don't know it's not airborne.
We know that it's aerosolized when you sneeze or cough or talk too loudly.
Right. Your droplets going out.
We don't know if it is airborne.
Although not definitive, breathing on someone does not appear to be a vehicle of transmission. Given that, the wearing of a mask doesn't protect someone from breathing in COVID. But, and this is a big but, he says I like big buts and I cannot lie, the argument for not wearing a mask as a deterrent against airborne transmission is a backwards argument. This argument assumes erroneously that the mask is for the protection of the wearer. Here is what we definitely know about COVID. And again, I haven't looked these things up, folks.
Coming from a listener, yes.
Coming from a listener, those of KVMF or its financiers.
Okay.
Sam says COVID-19 is suspended in droplets emitted from the body, such as sneezing or coughing. It can survive on various surfaces for hours and sometimes days. People with COVID-19 are infectious long before they show significant symptoms. These are all facts that I knew early on. These were the facts that I used that informed my position originally 2 months ago. Me personally, Ainsley. Basically the big one being you could be carrying coronavirus around and sneezing it on things without ever actually getting sick.
Right.
Because you have an effective immune system that's actually fighting the virus off. but you could be still spreading the immune system to other surfaces that other people would touch who don't have an effective immune system.
Right.
So back to what Sam was saying. Wearing a mask in public is not about stopping COVID coming in. It's about stopping COVID from coming out. If people wear masks, the chances of them inadvertently sneezing or coughing onto surfaces that will be touched by other people goes down a whole lot. If I sneeze in the produce section of the grocery store while wearing a mask, I am less likely to have nose droplets spray all over the mangoes you are about to buy and eat. The mask I wear isn't for my safety, it's for yours.
So I'm aware of that argument.
I think that's a very sensible conclusion of all of those facts that we've been given.
It's very sensible.
Mm-hmm.
It's reasonable.
So why would we ever have any other conversation then about masks? Shouldn't just everybody be wearing masks?
So there's other perspectives.
Okay, but do those other perspectives have scientific data behind them?
Apparently. So when we say mask, we're not defining what a mask is.
Mm-hmm.
We're not defining whether this is an actual PPE or if this is something made from clothing that somebody found at Goodwill and sewed together. There's different air passage. So now I understand that some people say you're nitpicking because the most crude version of this, as I've heard, is if somebody's going to poop on you, they can poop on you with pants or without pants.
And it will make a difference in how much poop you get on you.
That's the most extreme version. Which,
less snot on the mangoes.
Yes. So yes, that makes total sense to me. A lot of what we're dealing with in the show is not whether or not the mask is a good idea or not a good idea, but our seeming difficulty to have a civil dialogue over it. Where people say there is no discussion because I've read this. It blows into a larger, when I zoom out, I see this is exactly how the modern progressive left deals with the right in politics. They are idiots. I know all the correct information and they're idiots. So I am going to club them with facts because I am the church of science and science is not wrong. And so I'm going to club them with
Science
facts.
is the thing that we can put our faith in, even though we maybe don't put our faith in God or our daddies anymore.
Right, so you put your faith in science. I know these scientific things. You are saying something different than what I'm saying, so therefore wrong. It comes across as condescending. It doesn't come across as enlightened. When we're dealing politically back and forth across this divide, it helps keep us divided. The same thing applies when we're talking about this debate. Instead of, it might be tiresome if you're going to be an activist for one side or the other, if you're there for protecting your freedom or protecting your grandma, whatever side you're on, it's a little exhaustive to enter into the fray because you may have to explain yourself over and over and over. And what happens is when people start hammering you with facts, I don't know if that is, of course, I want good factual information. There are different scientists, there hasn't been a lot of consensus that I've seen in terms of mask, not mask. There is consensus among the larger organizations now, but that consensus changed within a month. That's the kind of stuff that makes me not a conspiracy nut, but wanting to keep my ears open for what new information may be coming in. Because once you pick up the flag for the team, you stop listening to whether that's the team you want to be on.
I see what you're
And I
saying.
think there's new information that's coming out that we should be paying attention to. There's new information about the virus, what it is, how it spreads. There's new information about once you get it, will you get it again? There's new information about herd immunity, which I can get into, which is that the appropriate response or not? There might be a good time, let me know when you want to go into the different germ theory
versus
terrain theory, because if we're basing a lot of our information, a lot of our science on a theory that is not the ultimate truth, but it is a working theory, there's another theory, terrain theory, which also is valid and scientific.
It is more valid than germ theory because germ theory is not scientifically correct to the body.
So, do you want to do that now, or do we have some other questions we want to do?
So here's the problem.
Because the premise of the argument is about
which argument?
Mask or no mask.
Right.
It's based on germ theory.
Yes.
Which is most of our
Which is just protect
authorities,
right.
our authoritative voices are working from germ theory. So I want to talk about terrain theory because it might help us see the things differently. It might change the dialogue.
Yeah, and this is why we have 2-hour shows. This is why we do 2-hour shows, because this is a lot of information to cover. This is information, we've been quarantined at home for the past few months, reading a lot of articles and watching a lot of videos and fact checking a lot of things on Snopes and other various fact checker sources. There's a lot of information out there aside from the basic information that was disseminated in the beginning, back in February or back in December or back in March or whatever it was. And people are dying for a lot of reasons other than because they got coronavirus.
Right.
So I think, even though many of my loved ones just don't want to talk about whether you should wear a mask or not, because they just want people to wear a mask because they're worried about their health or the health of somebody that they really care about. Why can't we just all wear masks? What harm could it do?
Those are valid
Why
feelings.
can't we just all stay home? What harm could it do?
Right.
It's actually doing a lot of harm. And I think if we can have the compassion and the elasticity in our minds, we ought to have a conversation about what other options for helping everybody get through the next year or two are there besides stay alone at home with a mask on? And are those two things actually helping people more than harming people? So anyway, that's just to say there are a lot of subjects to talk about today.
Yes.
It's not as easy as just pointing to this scientist who we trust or that scientific organization who we can trust. It takes a lot of work, and we want to walk you guys through the work that we've been doing over the past couple of months, and hopefully some of that information will be helpful to you. I also understand that at some point, a lot of people are just going to say, no, I'm not listening to you anymore because I just want to wear a mask because I think that's the thing that's going to make this all end and keep my loved ones safe.
Having open inquiry can come across as heretical if you've signed up for a team strong.
Dark and I must not care about our immunocompromised friends because we're talking about how maybe mask wearing isn't safe for everyone.
We're not actually being able to have those conversations, so there are some people who are wearing masks for the sake of others. There are some people who are wearing masks for themselves. There are some people who are wearing masks because they're afraid, and it makes them feel better. And the kind of person who's not conscious enough, where they just want to wear a mask because they're afraid, people have been setting their houses on fire because they've been microwaving their masks to try to keep it sterilized. Not everybody knows how vectors work, how to keep the virus from going around. Some people are creating septic situations in their own mask, endangering their health because of they're neurotic and they're afraid and they're uneducated on the process of how to do the thing.
Nobody likes to be called neurotic, afraid, or uneducated.
Some people are. And just because you do any of those things doesn't mean you're those things. I'm just painting a picture.
Right.
An extreme version. So because it's an extreme version, that somebody might wear a mask obsessively, create a septic situation in their own face, and then get sick.
Yeah.
Compromise their immune system, and then possibly get COVID if they have to go to the hospital because they have a compromised immune system. This is just a scenario that I think is worth entertaining. But to entertain it is to for some people, is to blaspheme, and they take offense.
This is why we call it religion.
And they get punitive with you.
I will divide my friends into people who wear masks and people who do not wear masks.
I had a friend say that, yes.
I've had several friends say that.
I find that disturbing, because it's not the kind of things that we could be doing in this window of opportunity, where we're in, I think, a time of transition politically, economically, socially. There's a lot of possibility for change right now. And if we're spending that time fighting over these prescribed distractions, wear a mask, don't wear a mask. If you're really compromised, I'm willing to go help compromised people go to the grocery store. There's plenty of people around here that would say, oh, you are compromised, people aren't wearing their masks. If you don't feel safe going out with a mask, I'm sure there are people who are willing to help.
Yeah.
Taking 95% of the people
out of
the system to protect 5% of the people is something that I think also should be discussed. I'm not going to say it's good or bad. I think but we're not having those discussions because you want to kill grandma is where it goes. And this is from fairly enlightened people. This is from people who are college educated, people who have consider themselves. It's strange to see
How scared people are of death.
where people go with the new divides as they come up.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a break and talk about germ theory versus terrain theory, just as a baseline.
Right. I'm going to read two.
Then we'll talk about the COVID death rate.
Yeah, let's do that. Germs, this is the basic difference between germ theory and terrain theory. Germs cause disease versus dis-ease is from a weakened immune system. I look at this as kind of the militarization of medicine with germ policing. So the idea is you have a clean, pristine perimeter, which is the human body.
Your body is fine.
Right. So the germ theory goes like this. The germ theory states that there are external germs that invade the body and are the direct cause of diseases.
You get sick because of something outside of you.
And it came and got you. The theory is based on the thinking that if we kill the germs, then we will not be sick and can keep them all at bay. Pasteur's theory is based on the belief that the human body is sterile, devoid of germs. If the body becomes invaded with germs, then the illness begins, and therefore, if we remove the germs externally and in the body, we will be healthy again. Western medicine took on this theory and is predominantly underpinned by the concepts by these concepts to fight illness. Drug and substances such as antibiotics, disinfectants, and vaccinations are all designed to kill external pathogens and remove them in and around our bodies. The constant addition of vaccinations is done with the belief that mankind and womankind will be able to eradicate all pathogens on the planet, and we will never have to worry about the evolution of the organisms nor keep our bodies strong. So this is just waiting for we're just going to wait for the vaccine. That's germ theory. Terrain theory goes like this.
So to re-summarize,
yes.
Germ theory says human bodies are fine, and human bodies get sick because something bad comes from the outside to make us sick.
It goes right along with, it folds into the Judeo-Christian, general Judeo-Christian body that the devil's going to come and get you, otherwise you're pure inside until the devil comes to get you. So that's germ theory. Terrain theory, the theory can be linked to both Claude Bernard and Antoine Béchamp. Both explored the concepts that the internal terrain determines our state of health. When the body is functioning optimally, a homeostasis happens, balance and health. Immunity and detoxification can function the way they're supposed to. Bernard and Béchamp and modern neuropathic philosophy believe that disease occurs as a result of imbalance in the internal terrain. Internal terrain can relate to pH balance, gut microbiome changes, stress, sleep patterns, etc. A weak terrain is naturally more vulnerable to external germs. If you use examples of plants and nature, those with altered sunlight, nutrition, water, temperature, etc., they are more susceptible to disease. Farming methods are even changing to incorporate a holistic growing method to increase yields and pest resistance. Interestingly, Pasteur changed his original theory at his deathbed with the famous quote, "The microbe is nothing, the milieu is everything."
What's milieu mean?
The scene, the terrain. And
milieu, your feelings?
I have to look it up now. You look it up. And there are many others who are shifting their beliefs on disease and optimal treatment. So the general idea of that is germs are there. The germs are everywhere.
They're always there.
There's a lot of people who have COVID-19 and they'll never know it because their
a person's environment.
Yeah, their environment was not so out of whack that the germ was able to take advantage of them. So there are people we have. If you look at where, I think it would be really interesting in the aftermath of all this to look at nutrition and to look at the health of various communities that were affected in various ways. So there's certain demographics that are being affected, and that's because they're already compromised. So that's something that needs to be dealt with and talked about and honored and engineered around. We're not having those discussions. The flatten the curve thing was amazing when it came out. So this virus comes out, and suddenly people said flatten the curve, and there were a million iterations to tell people, let's lay low until we figure this out.
Yeah.
Tremendously effective.
And many people are still using that science
Yes.
for their ongoing life right now.
Yes.
As the best thing we could be doing to keep people safe.
The curve was over time. So we realized that ventilators were the big deal. Now we're finding out maybe ventilators are not the right treatment. So the flattening the curve was to keep people from crowding the hospitals and using other ventilators, which is good. Now we know that they might have been further compromised by being put on ventilators.
Yes.
So flattening the curve not only kept us from overwhelming the health system, but also helped us keep the damage to a minimum.
As we realized that ventilators were aggravating symptoms of COVID and causing long-term lung damage.
So flattening the curve is wonderful. People rallied.
We did it.
We did it. We flattened the curve. Now we're finding that there's different, right now, they're finding, there's a lot of different sources besides MSNBC and CNN and Fox about what's going on. There are, vitamin C is a thing that people have been talking about, that people, injections of vitamin C to treat it when you have it. For a long time, people have always prescribed vitamin C as a way to protect your immune system in the first place. And that seems to be, we have time right now to protect our immune systems if we're not already compromised, or if we are compromised, to bolster our immune systems. And that means doing some things that we know we can do. Take some vitamin C, make sure, get some exercise if you can get some exercise. Do the things that are appropriate for your condition to bolster your immune system. Another big part of the thing that we could do is not stress. So if we're fighting and stressing over these various and sundries, this misleading information, the perceptual destabilizations that we're going through by
The
feeling
feelings of confusion that you don't know which authority figure is taking care of you.
that's not good for your immune system.
Yeah.
That's part of the motivation for me for doing this show, is trying to find ways to help people not stress, because that's a big
People
problem.
die other ways than coronavirus. You have friends in Hawaii who are struggling with the inability to take care of their children. And I have friends in other countries who are in other states in the US who are dealing with just near suicidal levels of depression and anxiety and loneliness.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the best conversation that we could have, as from my research so far, for why maybe not everyone needs to wear a mask and not everyone needs to stay inside, is the data for coronavirus deaths. When you compare how many coronavirus deaths are of people who don't have pre-existing conditions. And it's an extremely small percentage. So some of the data that I was looking at this week is from the New York City health data, which they provided as of May 13th in New York City. 15,000 people have died, and coronavirus has been written as the cause of death on their death certificate.
Okay.
Of those 15,000 people, 13,000 already had heart disease, lung disease, cancer, an immunodeficiency, hypertension, asthma, kidney disease, or gastrointestinal disease.
That seems consistent with what I've been hearing, that the people who are dying were, for the vast majority, already compromised.
Right. And also we've heard statistically, mostly older people are susceptible.
Statistically, yes.
So me stating these facts does not mean I don't love my friends with immunodiseases.
Correct.
Me stating these facts does not mean I don't want my elderly friends to stay alive. It doesn't mean I don't care about my grandma, and it doesn't mean I don't care about my friends on cancer, and it doesn't mean I don't care about my friends with Down syndrome. I'm saying, in light of the harm being caused by isolation and the inability to take care of your loved ones because you don't have a job, it's worth having a discussion about how many people should actually be self-isolating and wearing masks to the grocery store.
How many people need to be taking more direct responsibility for their condition? And
unfortunately, in the US, we have very little self-awareness or education towards taking care of our own health. Lots of people have chronic gut problems and just assume they're just always going to have gut problems.
That's just the way you feel.
I just always have heartburn. I just always have back pain. I just always have joint pain. Instead of figuring out how well their body is able to take care of them. If you are always inflamed in some way and your body encounters a virus such as the seasonal flu or the coronavirus or some other virus that's going around, you're going to get sicker than people who are in tune with their bodies and are doing what their body needs to not be sick.
We have a lot of cases in this country. A lot of it has to do with our behaviors and our diet.
Yeah.
The people who are getting, not just the people who are dying, but the people who are having the long sickness and getting over that. We have a few comments. Do you want to, Kira's been going at it.
Sure.
Do you want to take them?
Kira says, wearing a mask is not just about your own health, but whether you are willing to get other people sick.
Yeah, we're aware of that one. Yeah. That's
I
been pretty clear.
am aware of that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Over the past couple of months, although originally I held a perspective very similar to that one, my perspective has evolved as I have continued to research data and observe the impacts on my loved ones of mask wearing and social distancing and all of the opinions that go with those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I can get into my personal positions later on. You were playing devil's advocate with
Yes.
me this week a lot.
Yes.
You know, like I have some pretty vehement feelings these days about what we should actually be doing as a society to protect each other.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
Most citizens have an idea, a very vehement one right now, about what we should be doing to protect each other.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my loved ones are very vehement that we should be wearing masks and staying home to protect each other.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my loved ones are very vehement that we should be getting back to work and taking care of our jobs and our economy in order to protect each other.
Mm-hmm.
And both people have the same goal: take care of our loved ones and get this horrible spring over with.
Mm-hmm.
But we have different ideas on what
On
we
how
need
to
to
do it.
do. Kira continues, also many people struggle to listen to science because science not only offers something to the human soul, offers nothing to the human soul, but typically denies the soul's existence. So if you are a person who has a spiritual practice that involves your soul, you oftentimes have a hard time listening to strictly data, empirical, scientific information that's just talking about...
Doesn't speak to you on the soul level, right?
Exactly. Many people struggle to listen to science because science not only offers nothing to the human soul, but typically denies the soul's existence. But if we rely only on a dream to inform us, will we ever grasp the dreamer? Kira says, all feelings aside, I see this story as being about whether or not we are going to learn how to value each other more than currency. All other debates aside, I see this as the core American story around COVID-19. And while I was speaking just then, she continued with another comment. We still need to find a way to heal the national cultural divide. Some people will never feel safe and even feel disrespected by those refusing to wear a mask or social distance. Should we have a community for each group? How do we build a system where everyone feels safe and not angry with each other or laughing at each other, depending on which side of what many do feel should not be an argument? There is a lot to figure out. Where is the leadership?
Yeah, it hasn't been a lot of that. That's why, if she wasn't here at the beginning of the show, that's why we were playing the Adam Curtis clip. Can I read a little bit? I think this is a good point to go back to some of the research that I was doing on this documentary, Hyper-Normalization. I want to talk a little bit about what the inspiration of the documentary was, because I think it's directly related to the style of discussions we're having over the content.
It's hard to talk about whether we should be wearing masks or not when people say things like, it's a debate between caring about each other or money.
Right.
Because I understand from my liberal and progressive friends that it doesn't look like the Republicans care about human life, but they actually do. They are out protesting for jobs
They see things differently.
and freedom for the safety and well-being of their loved ones.
Yes.
Just like we are protesting for stay home and masks for the safety and well-being
Sure.
of our loved ones. And oftentimes it's the media and the people that are telling us about each other that paint the two sides as the enemy.
How we should be dealing with each other. Doesn't
Right.
matter what the issue is. So I want to read a little
So we
bit.
have to zoom out.
Right. I just posted a link to an article from the New Yorker. This came out in 2016, around the time this documentary, Hypernormalization, came out. This is from that article. The anthropologist Alexei Yurchak, in his 2005 book, Everything Was Forever Until It Was No More, The Last Soviet Generation, argues that during the final days of Russian communism, the Soviet system had been so successful at propagandizing itself, at restricting the consideration of possible alternatives, that no one within Russian society, but the politicians or journalists, academics or citizens, could conceive of anything but the status quo until it was far too late to avoid the collapse of the old order. The system was unsustainable. This was obvious to anyone waiting in line for bread or gasoline, to anyone fighting in Afghanistan, or working in the halls of the Kremlin. But in official public life, such thoughts were unexpressed. The end of the Soviet Union was, among Russians, both unsurprising and unforeseen. Yurchak...
Wait, both?
Yes.
Both unsurprising and we didn't see it
unforeseen.
coming.
Yes.
Wow.
Yurchak coined the term hypernormalization to describe this process, an entropic acceptance and false belief in a clearly broken polity and the myths that undergird it. So our politics are broken, our medicine is broken, half of our GDP is the medical industry. It's not about keeping people healthy, it's about maintaining sickness. We have a lot of broken systems, and we know they're broken, but we're not really rallying to go change them right now. So that is what the end of the Soviet Union looked like, exactly what we're looking at right now. He goes on to say, as this fake world grew, all of us went along with it because the simplicity was reassuring. Hypernormalization spends nearly 3 hours telling us how we got to such a troubling moment in world history, from Donald Trump's emergence as a celebrity business tycoon, despite his inability to keep his casinos afloat, to the Reagan administration's invention of Muammar Gaddafi as a global supervillain in order to avoid confrontation with a newly radicalized Syria. The film finds moment after moment.
Radicalized as in liberated.
The film finds moment after moment where lies have become codified and accepted, where Western leaders have refused hard choices, ceded authority to global finance, and built simplistic, patently false narratives to steer the public away from the uncertainty and ambivalence of our times. That most of us have accepted these tall tales has had, according to Curtis, unintended and often terrifying consequences. Hypernormalization would like us to think that politicians no longer dream of changing the world, cowed by the sheer chaos of its contemporary design. All they can do is manage the thinly veiled control that financial services, tech, and energy companies lord over all of us. And I'll finish up with this paragraph. Early 80s tech utopians thought that the internet would provide radical freedom from the corruption of the state. Manifestos were written, and the general tenor of the Northern California dream was built on the sense that technology could open the doors of perception, allowing us to see parallel versions of our reality, not unlike what those who had experimented with LSD in the 1960s and 70s came to believe. Over time, however, this vision was, in Curtis's telling, perverted by the encroachment of corporate and state control. The internet now resembles the dystopian cyberspace of William Gibson novels, one in which a small handful of entities use our networks as a means to spy on everyone and also control the ideological limits of popular discourse by selling ourselves back to us, reinforcing our own pre-existing ideas by making sure we don't encounter anything in social media or in e-commerce that pierces our algorithmically curated worldview.
Wow.
That was 2016.
Our worldview, in general, unless we're putting work in to own our own minds, is being curated by the system, providing us with the information that keeps us as good members of the system.
Like the end of the Soviet Union, we know it's broken, but we're not going to do anything to change it. And then we're going to be surprised when it's done. And it's going to happen fast. I mean, it might happen in 20 years, but when it happens, this is what I've read. These things happen overnight. The fall of the Soviet Union wasn't a year-long process. It was no longer there.
Suddenly we're in a different system. It's not like all the people go away and all the stores go away and the land goes away. It's that we're suddenly in a different system.
So I think while we're in the system that we're in, and in this sort of kairos, as I like to say, in between, this opportunity to be maybe envisioning something different.
The opportune moment.
We might want to refine the way that we're communicating with each other and stop making enemies of our friends. It's the top of the hour.
Perhaps we should play the Adam Curtis clip again.
I'm going to play it again.
We have a variety of folks who are tuning in right now here at the top of the hour that were not with us in the beginning of the show.
I'll play it again because it's worth hearing twice.
It's it's 501 in KBMF LPB land. And when we come back, we're going to talk about mask statistics and data, why you would wear one, who should maybe be wearing them, and does a mask made out of a sock like that girl on TikTok showed you actually do anything?
And we also might monetize it this time. All right, this is a clip from Adam Curtis talking about one of my favorite Russian supervillains from his 2016 documentary, Hyper-Normalization.
Russia this year has been hopeless, depressing, and above all confusing. To which the only response is, oh dear. But what this film is going to suggest is that that defeatist response has become a central part of a new system of political control. And to understand how this is happening, you have to look to Russia, and to a man called Vladislav Surkov, who is a hero of our time. Surkov is one of President Putin's advisors, and has helped him maintain his power for 15 years. But he has done it in a very new way.
Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
He came originally from the avant-garde art world, and those who have studied his career say that what Surkov has done is import ideas from conceptual art into the very heart of politics. His aim is to undermine people's perception of the world, so they never know what is really happening. Surkov turned Russian politics into a bewildering, constantly changing piece of theatre. He sponsored all kinds of groups, from neo-Nazi skinheads to liberal human rights groups. He even backed parties that were opposed to President Putin. But the key thing was that Surkov then let it be known that this was what he was doing, which meant that no one was sure what was real or fake. As one journalist put it, it's a strategy of power that keeps any opposition constantly confused, a ceaseless shape-shifting that is unstoppable because it's indefinable. Which is exactly what Surkov is alleged to have done in the Ukraine this year. In typical fashion, as the war began, Surkov published a short story about something he called non-linear war. A war where you never know what the enemy are really up to, or even who they are. The underlying aim, Surkov says, is not to win the war, but to use the conflict to create a constant state of destabilized perception in order to manage and control. But maybe we have something similar emerging here in Britain. Everything we're told by journalists and politicians is confusing and contradictory. Of course, there is no Mr. Surkov in charge, but it's an odd, non-linear world that plays into the hands of those in power. British troops have come home from Afghanistan, but nobody seems to know whether it was a victory or whether it was a defeat. Aging disc jockeys are prosecuted for crimes they committed decades ago, while practically no one in the City of London is prosecuted for the endless financial crimes that are being revealed there. In Syria, we are told that President Assad is the evil enemy, but then his enemies turn out to be even more evil than him. So we bomb them, and by doing that, we help keep Assad in power. But the real epicenter of this non-linear world is the economy. And the closest we have to our own shape-shifting, postmodern politician is George Osborne. He tells us proudly that the economy is growing, but at the same time, wages are going down. He says he is cutting the deficit, but then it's revealed that the deficit is going up. But the dark heart of this shape-shifting world is quantitative easing. The government is insisting on taking billions of pounds out of the economy through its austerity programme. Yet at the very same time, it is pumping billions of pounds into the economy through quantitative easing. The equivalent of £24,000 for every family in Britain. But it gets even more confusing, because the Bank of England have admitted that those billions of pounds have not gone where they are supposed to. A vast amount of the money has actually found its way into the hands of the wealthiest 5% in Britain. It has been described as the biggest transfer of wealth to the rich in recent documented history. It could be a huge scandal, comparable to the greedy oligarchs in Russia. A ruthless elite siphoning off billions of public money. But nobody seems to know. It sums up the strange mood of our time, where nothing really makes any coherent sense. We live with a constant vaudeville of contradictory stories that makes it impossible for any real opposition to emerge, because they can't counter it with a coherent narrative of their own. And it means that we as individuals become ever more powerless, unable to challenge anything, because we live in a state of confusion and uncertainty, to which the response is, oh dear.
That's what they want you to say.
That's right, that's Adam Curtis from his 2016 documentary, Hypernormalization. It is available on YouTube for anybody to watch.
So, I want to talk about three things.
Okay,
I want to talk about why shouldn't we just all wear masks?
okay.
I want to talk about censorship.
Yes,
I want to talk about my own perspective right now.
very good.
But first, why did you just play that clip from Adam Curtis's Hypernormalization?
We played it twice. I've watched it several times today before we even came into the station. It's the part of the movie that I was looking at, talking about this cat, Vladislav Surkov, who is a modern-day wizard. He's a guy who came from avant-garde theater, rose to power, became Putin's wizard, worked for the Vatican. He took
Merlin.
He took PR to a new level, public relations to a new level. He figured out how to inflame people's feelings. So if you make a bunch of Nazis, then people have to be anti-Nazi.
You can't just not have an opinion about Nazis.
You can't just not have an opinion. Same thing about the gays, same thing about religion, so on and so forth. So he just figured out how to fund various groups to give them a rise in the news. He was manipulating the news to make sure the news focused on the story of this divisive thing that is occurring, and then told everybody that's what he was doing. So now when they're watching the news, they don't know if it's truth, or if they're being lied to, or if it's a part of some campaign.
And
so
that's the perception destabilization.
That's perceptual destabilization. Then people just go back to their friends group. I'm blue, all my friends are blue, all my friends are doing this, that's what I'm doing.
I just need to feel
It's
safe.
really, and it comes from partisan networks. It stops coming from a sense of the larger whole. It comes from your friends group. And that's the next, he wrote a book about the Fifth World War, where it's not about this allied group against this allied group. It's about four, eight groups all going at it at one time. And that's where we're headed. Everybody, it used to be the left versus the right, or the Christians against the non-Christians.
Used to be.
Now it's 1,000 shades of each. And that seems to be where we're heading, this constant division. Now we have the mask versus no mask people. It's a part of what that's what I'm focused on this show, the larger story of how we are dividing ourselves by participating in this virtue signaling partisan catnip beyond use. It just becomes about emotion, it becomes about you feeling like you're an activist on your computer while you're stuck at home by cheering for your team.
Feeling
But
like
it doesn't
you need to
be
know
teams.
what to do to
It doesn't
protect
need
your
to be
children.
teams. Yes. So we further fragment ourselves, and I see the mask thing as a further fragmentation.
And
we can have intelligent dialogue. So
I
you
think
can,
it's important
yes.
to point out that we are fragmenting ourselves, but also thinking that it's the other guys fighting us that is the problem.
We're just defending ourselves.
And they're over there thinking it's us fighting them that's the problem.
Yes.
And none of us are paying attention to who is making us all fight each other.
There's interest to be had. Look at who's getting rich right now.
You don't make very much money off of a bunch of healthy people with no mental issues.
That's true. So let's talk about your
So I'm
perspective
feeling pretty
and
depressed
your
right
bias.
now.
Okay, go
I'm
on.
feeling pretty depressed.
Let's talk about it.
That's what this show is about, right?
Well, it's about orthodoxies and the pain of having to get out of them.
And the difficulty of changing your mind, and the pain of having an opinion that other people don't like, and how do you move beyond a bubble when it might mean you lose loved ones? Post-Orthodoxy. So
Change my mind. I mean, really, say the thing, and then hopefully somebody can change your mind if there's a better way out there. Otherwise, you should have a perspective.
people should have opinions, and they should also not be afraid of changing their mind when presented with new information.
Well, that's a dream world. I love it.
Dream world.
Manatizing
So-
the edge of time.
What I'm depressed about right now is that I was censored today.
Oh.
I was having, in preparation for this show, because I feel that this conversation is really important in light of all of the suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Now is not the time to just pick one rule and make that rule God.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complex system full of a bunch of complex, individualized people, and we have to come up with complex solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of exhausted as a nation and want a simple solution.
Good luck.
So I went around and I found my friends who are often having really meaningful and intelligent discussions about coronavirus and masks, and I shared the link to our show this afternoon on their posts. And I would be like, I hope you don't mind if I invite the people that you're talking with to our radio show this afternoon, because we want to have a broader discussion outside of our basic friend group. We want to be talking to people who have different opinions than us. That's how you stay alive.
That's how you grow, anyway. Learn and grow.
I guess it depends on your definition of alive.
Right.
So I shared the link to our show on one friend's post, and I said, everybody has opinions about the mask. I hope you don't mind if I invite people to our conversation today
To participate in the conversation.
Conversation about, the religion of the mask, and the yes maskers and the no maskers, and how, and I said how there can be no debate is an unhealthy answer. And this friend responded to that post and said, if this is about whether or not people should or should not wear a mask, there is no debate, and I want you to take this post down. And I had gone to go take a shower, so I didn't see it right away. When I came back and saw it, there was another person commenting, someone I don't know, who was basically saying, this is ridiculous. Why would you divide people in a time like this? We need to work together. You're labeling people and dividing them into maskers and non-maskers. And so I kind of responded to that person and to my friend at the same time in a separate comment, so that if she did decide to delete my link to the show, hopefully my second comment would stand by itself, because I know that's how social media works. Everything underneath the first post gets deleted. So I was like, I'm just going to share. Dark and I are not actually dividing people into maskers and non-maskers. That has already happened. That happened when people who wear masks started saying that people who don't wear masks are wrong. And when people who don't wear masks started saying that people who do wear masks are wrong.
Suckers.
People are dividing themselves.
Yeah. And
I also said, our intention with this show this afternoon is not to debate whether or not masks are healthy or unhealthy. We're gonna present some data, and people can make decisions.
It's about whether the debate is healthy.
It's about whether or not we're having a healthy debate.
Yeah.
Which our opinion on that is that we are not, as civilians, having a healthy debate.
Right.
That's our opinion. And I screenshotted both of those comments and the comments that she left for me, and I forgot to send them to you in advance of the show so that I could read them more specifically.
Oh, they disappeared?
I also invited her to share her personal health information with me, and I'd be happy to talk about it anonymously because I have a lot of friends who are immunocompromised.
People you would never think.
Yeah, I have friends with immunocompromisations and friends with cancer and friends with kids with Down syndrome, and I care about them and their perspectives and opinions, and I want to have a discussion about whether or not, who should be wearing masks and who should be staying home.
Mm-hmm.
We should be talking about what's healthiest for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to go and check and see if she had responded, and she had deleted all of my comments, which was shocking to me. It was, and it gives me a sad feeling, and I've kind of been sitting in my sad feeling of like, this is a very loving, intelligent, open-minded, very progressive person.
Sure.
Who not only said, I disagree with what you're saying, but also prevented anybody else from seeing what I was saying.
So that's the fundamentalist religion thing that you just came from.
Yeah.
In the form of a discussion. So you're with us or against us. It's very George Bush. It's ironic to start seeing people who consider themselves progressive, left, liberal, demonstrating this sort of George Bushian, you're with us or against us. That used to be mocked. That was mocked 20 years ago.
What was mocked?
The with us or against us thing of the right wing.
Oh.
Where if you're either with us or you're against us. If you don't like it, get out of our country. And now I see progressive, evolved, liberal type people with us or against us because we're exhausted.
We're exhausted.
I don't have a nuanced answer.
Yeah.
I know I'm on the right side, so I don't want to even enter into the idea of having to change my mind because I'm already invested in it. And I think that's what's going on.
Yeah.
To a degree. And I don't know if that's healthy for those folks or me either in my community. I would like to see us having more nuanced conversations. Maybe new information might come out. Some people, there's a lot of people who lurk, who are online and who are lurking, who have really valuable research and information, but they're not going to enter into the fray because they're going to get shot down by somebody telling them they're a Nazi because they don't want to wear a mask, or that they're sheeple because they do want to wear a mask. So there's a lot of really good information that can't enter into the public square because we haven't refined our ability to have
people just slap people.
We're not having adult conversations.
Yeah, people just slap people.
So, yes.
So, in light of the other censorship.
Oh, that's censorship. Yeah, let's go to that piece. This is fascinating.
Which I just completely lost my internet on the computer. Oh, yeah. So,
I can find it.
Did I send it to you? Maybe you lost your internet also.
I posted it on my page.
Yeah, but maybe, I'm just saying I don't have KBMF internet right now.
I have internet.
Okay.
I'll find it for you right now. So, you posted this before we came in. The article, I'm going to click on here. Here you go. With that.
Yeah. So, not only was my friend censored me, unfortunately, she didn't like my opinion or the fact that I wanted to have a discussion about what was perhaps maybe healthier than everybody stay home and everyone wear masks.
Mm-hmm.
And she also prevented anybody else from seeing that information, which is her right on her timeline.
It's her living room. Yeah.
The sort of feelings that I have emotionally is like, why would you do that but still be friends with someone? She's not going to message me on the side and say, hey, I'm deleting your stuff because I don't want to talk about that on my timeline. Or anything.
There's no discussion.
There's no discussion. Just shut down, but we're still going to be friends?
Yeah, no.
That's weird.
It's weird.
So in conjunction with my research this morning, really fascinatingly, I found out that Podcast Addict, which is a podcast catcher, it's an app like Spotify, kind of like iTunes, kind of like Stitcher. It's an app you can download on your phone where you get all your favorite podcasts on that app, and it makes it really easy to keep track of where you're at and listen to episodes on the go. It's been suspended by Google after a decade.
Okay.
So it's a well-known app. And this is what Google said for why they're suspending this app. Pursuant to Section 8.3 of the Developer Distribution Agreement and the Enforcement Policy, apps referencing COVID-19 or any related terms in any form will only be approved for distribution on Google Play if those apps are published, commissioned, or authorized by official government entities or public health organizations. Google reserves the discretion to remove apps from Google Play based on a number of factors, including a high risk of abuse.
So what they're saying is we are living in the world of germ theory, and there will be no discussion of terrain theory?
They're saying people may only get their information about coronavirus and what might be a good idea of what to do from the government or a government-approved organization.
That sounds
scary.
Sounds a little tricky.
Sounds scary. If I can't get internet back, I'm gonna have to just use your computer the rest of the show.
That's fine. I don't need it.
So Damon had a really great comment earlier in the video. Greg says, I think your intentions are real and good, and you're doing a great job. Please stay positive.
Oh, yay.
I'm a sad puppy. It's sad. Why can't we just have a conversation?
Because you're wrong.
Wrong. Trying to say it like that kid.
Wrong.
Wrong. I can't do it. Before the break, Kira said, Brian made a comment. Dying isn't the only worry with COVID-19. Wouldn't you want to take steps to not share the regular but serious flu?
Sure, absolutely.
I think that's a good point. I think, and so I commented in response to him, like, yes, in my opinion, currently, based on the research I've been doing for the past 2 months, which may change, the people who should be considering social distancing and considering wearing masks would either be someone who feels sick or someone who feels that their immune system would not be able to fight off the virus.
Right. And then people who interact with them should be aware of who they're interacting with.
Yes, which means much less public-private. People have to be like, hey, sorry, thank you for inviting me over for dinner, but I actually have lupus, and so it's not safe for me to go out of my house right now. We have to stop keeping our weaknesses so private that nobody can help us take care of each other. Kira responded, except wearing masks doesn't prevent you from catching it, only prevents you from spreading it? Question mark. Which is very interesting because several of the articles I was reading today in The Atlantic were pointing out that a lot of the rules people are using for mask wearing actually don't have anything to do with
protecting other people.
So it's like we talk about everybody should wear a mask, but we're not talking about why. Are you wearing a mask to protect other people, or are you wearing a mask to protect yourself? And are masks designed to do either of those things? And is the thing that you're wearing actually a mask?
There's a lot of things covering people's faces that are emotional woobies.
Yeah.
They're doing next to nothing.
Droplets in or out.
Right.
Especially if you're not washing them every day, and every time you go to the store and touch it to adjust it on your face, you have to wash it again. You know, the inconsistencies are frustrating to me because I see people wanting a simple answer and then doing things that completely invalidate the simple answer that they've chosen to keep themselves safe.
I have a little anecdote I want to throw out.
Okay.
This little anecdote goes like this. So once they started opening back up here in Montana, they started opening up some stores. You and I went to drop off some things. We've been doing some house cleaning, so we went to Goodwill. We had to pick up a couple of things. So we went in, and I saw somebody who I know in town who was wearing a mask, but I still know who they are. And I noticed,
sometimes I don't.
I noticed she didn't acknowledge me. I thought maybe I got the psychic hit. She's not acknowledging me because I'm not wearing a mask. So then we went to BSW and saw the same person. Also didn't acknowledge me.
Right.
And I thought, okay. Now I ran into this person 2 nights ago, and at a bar.
Which are also open.
And we're
not going to say where it was.
No. Wasn't wearing a mask. Hugging and kissing everyone.
Shaking hands.
She was at the store finding material to make a heroic number of masks for our frontline workers.
Which is awesome.
Which is great. And I said, I thought I saw you at the stores. And I said, I figured you weren't talking to me because you were virtue shaming me. And she goes, I was trying to send a signal.
Trying to send a signal that she's not going to talk to you because you're not wearing a mask.
You're not wearing a mask.
While she has her arm slung around you at the bar.
Yeah, and kisses me on the cheek at a bar.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing. It's the same thing about if you're wearing a mask at the grocery store and then you can be virtue signaled as a good person. But everybody there, like, tell me the experience that you had at another restaurant the other day with the gloves. Tell me what just happened there. See, we're not having nuanced discussion, and so we're not educating ourselves on the proper use of a mask.
This is why we should be talking about it.
It's not enough just to wear a mask.
You can't just wear gloves.
You have to use it properly.
Yes, gloves are not magic.
So share your restaurant experience.
So I went to a
not dine-in, just
pick-up only restaurant.
Yeah.
To get a type of food that I like, that I won't mention.
Yes.
And one of the people working at this restaurant was wearing a mask, but mostly around his chin. And sometimes he would pop it back up over his mouth, but then he got uncomfortable with not being able to talk to me, and so he would pull it down around his chin to talk to me, and then put it back up with his gloves on.
His rubber gloves.
He took my order on the computer with his gloves on. He took my credit card with his gloves on. And then he went and started making the food.
Yeah, for you and other people?
For 3 orders worth of people with those same gloves on.
Right, so the mask looks nice. If you're not using it properly, that's why we have to have these discussions.
We can't just be yes mask or no mask.
No, we have to talk about what is accurate and what is correct. It's not good enough just to wear a mask or not wear a mask. These 2 stories are that's just 2 things that she and I encountered in the last 48 hours.
And our frustration with the inconsistencies and our frustration with the lack of education around personal protective equipment does not mean, well, forget it, nobody should wear masks.
No, not at all.
It means we should be talking about it.
But to have the conversation is to
talk about how we should be doing it properly, which means maybe not everybody needs to be wearing one.
So maybe stop throwing ire at people who are maybe questioning your dogma around the mask. Maybe that's good for everybody's sake.
It's important to come back to the dogma and be like, why are people so dogmatic? I think a large reason why people are so dogmatic about why can't you just wear a mask is either because they just want this to be over,
yes,
or they have a loved one who is immunocompromised,
yes,
or themselves.
Valid.
I'm a sick person. Don't you love me? Why won't you just wear a mask to the grocery store? Even though we don't live in the same town.
In the grocery store.
Yeah.
Everything's being touched. The is being touched. The credit cards are being touched. The mask is down below the nose.
And one of the things that we talked about a lot is a friend locally here who is immunocompromised in several ways, has 3 kids, and is a beloved member of the town, and dialogued a lot on Facebook in the beginning about the steps that his family were having to take to protect him, and that he's worried about getting to watch his kids grow up. Because he's one of the people where if he encounters the virus, he might actually die.
Right.
If I, Ainsley, encounter the virus, I probably will not die.
The odds are not there.
Yeah. And so I understand people who think they probably won't die being frustrated about having to stay home, stay isolated, and wear a mask. I also understand people who know themselves enough to know that they might die being frustrated that other people don't, they think you not wearing a mask means you don't care about me maybe dying. And so this person, when they get groceries, a delivery service does the shopping for them, drops it off on the front porch, no contact. And then his kids go outside and use sanitation wipes and gloves to clean all the groceries and put them into sanitary containers, like your cereal. You know, you open the box, you open the cereal bag, you pour it into a sanitary container, and the kid that hasn't been touching things takes it inside because your box is contaminated, and your bag is contaminated, and the wrapper on your freezer spinach is contaminated, and and so and then the kids go take their clothes off and take a shower. So that's what they're doing because they're worried about their dad dying. That is a very real story.
Yes.
I also have a friend in North Carolina who is extremely depressive and suicidal and has been living alone for the past 2 months. And all he talks about on Facebook is everything he's doing every day to try to not kill himself.
Right.
I have people who are at home alone with children that they can't afford to feed. We have a lot of different people in this country in a lot of different situations who are handling this better or worse. And Dark and I are coming from a position where we have abundance. We have loved ones that we're keeping in touch with online. We have we've been able to take care of ourselves financially over the past few months, and we have each other, and we actually enjoy each other. And so it's not like we're suddenly hanging out 24/7 with a spouse that we've forgotten how to love.
Right.
And so that's abundance. And I'm not speaking from that place of abundance as if I don't care about people who don't have that abundance. I'm speaking from that place of abundance in an attempt to try to help my friends who are living in a position of non-abundance, who are in abject poverty, worried about losing their house, can't feed their dog, can't feed their children.
There's a lot of gothic realities going on right now.
It's really, really horrible and harsh.
And people aren't making that their Facebook status.
No, they're not. You probably don't know.
Right.
So, who should be wearing a mask and staying at home?
Who should be wearing a mask and staying at home? What did your research tell you?
In my opinion, currently, based on the research I've been doing over the past couple of months into the efficacy of masks and germ theory and personal immune system strength and et cetera, I think that people who are sick or who feel that if they encountered a virus, they would die, should stay home. And get someone to buy their groceries for them.
We can rally around that cause.
If that is something that we can do, and my 30-year-old friend with 3 kids and a daycare business can get back to work, and she can be the person who takes time in the evening to go buy groceries for her elderly neighbor. Because she's probably not going to die if she gets coronavirus.
Right. We can do that.
So Damon says, I'd be curious if you had a listener that is against social distancing and mask wearing for the rest of the year.
That I know a person on my friends list like that.
And I'd like to hear from them what their logic is. Without judgment, I'm just curious why anyone would be opposed to wearing masks and social distancing for a while. Just a guess. It has to do with owning a business that is suffering, or it is a disbelief in the effectiveness of such precautions. I think what I'm looking for is what harm is perceived from taking precautions in the face of this kind of threat.
Yes, I'm very familiar with that stance. Why not wear the mask? It's not hurting you.
Yeah. Several people have said that to me in my research this week.
Why?
Why not just wear it?
That's what makes it dogmatic.
Just stay home. Like, okay, you have a partner that you like staying home with. You've been able to take care of yourself financially.
We should have a discussion around the best way to deal with the virus. And I think the mask discussion is putting the cart before the horse. We need to be talking about our representative government and why trillions of dollars went to the big banks, and we're still trying to figure out how to pay rent. The mask is diversion as far as I'm concerned. If you've done your research and you know that you need to protect yourself, then that's your responsibility to do that, and we can help you, we can support you. The idea of everybody staying at home, it's become a partisan thing. So if you're saying we want to go back to work.
I know people start seeing me in shades of red.
Yeah. If you say I want to get back to past quarantine, and that means the people who are at low risk going into the world and helping keep their people employed at low risk.
Or themselves
employed. I'm talking about the whole spectrum here. That it becomes weirdly partisan, where the idea of wanting to get back to your work, some people like their work. Some people enjoy interacting with people.
I would say many people don't know who they are if they're just home alone all the time.
If the restaurants and bars are not open, there's a ton of artists who are starving. So people say, don't go back to the restaurant, don't do it because it's not fair to the workers. I've gone to 2 restaurants. I asked the workers, it was a mixed bag. One person was like, I like the money. Another person was like, I am so glad to be out of the house. Now, should they have to get out of the house when we have a pandemic? No, if we had an adequate system, then we would be like most of the other industrialized nations where they actually take care of their people and make sure that we can ride out the storm. We don't have that protection that a lot of other people do. So the discussion
here in the U.S.
Yeah, I don't think we should just open up the environment. Ideally, we should all be able to be taken care of.
Take a break for a few
months. If they can make a few $1 trillion and just give it in 20 minutes on the stock market, they could help us get through a few months. In that few months, we could refine the way that we're talking to each other. We could stop dividing. That's the idea. But right now we're not doing it. We're starving. And we're at each other's throats over issues that are not going to resolve the problem that we're facing right now, which is the inability of our institutions to do what they're supposed to do.
And when people figured out which side of the mask or no mask debate they were on towards the end of March, beginning of April, and started turning their eyeballs back to politics again, suddenly now we have aliens.
Oh, that's what was in this Adam Curtis documentary. That it's a play-by-play of what happened in Russia. They're doing it here. When I say they, it's psychological. We're dealing with a lot of unknowns. I am not a conspiracy theorist thinking that somebody made a thing and is trying to get us to. I don't go down that road. That's why I say it's really easy to follow the money. Who is benefiting from this lockdown?
Mm-hmm. Do you know?
Yeah, do you know who Walmart's benefiting? Because there's no competition from small local stores. Amazon is benefiting because there's no competition. He's becoming the first trillionaire. He's doing fine.
While his employees don't have sick leave.
He owns the Washington Post, a paper of note. That's not necessarily a conspiracy, but the guy is in a horse race to become the first trillionaire. There's nobody behind him. He wants that. What are you going to do with $1 trillion? It's not about needing the money. It's about, I like what you said, boomers, the stock market, and being a billionaire or a trillionaire to boomers is like...
It's their app game.
It's their app game. It's Tetris. How do I get the number to go up? It has nothing to do with...
The feeling of satisfaction and achievement that you get from doinking around on the screen, and then you win, and then you feel like winning, and it's fun until you go back and you do it a little bit more tomorrow on your next break. And they're doing that with finances like young people are doing it with an app game that they level up and develop a character and run a narrative and whatever on their phone as a break from work. The millionaires and the billionaires and now the trillionaires are doing that with numbers in the sky while other people can't pay rent, and we're acting like if they had divided up, I don't remember the exact statistics, but if they had divided up the recent relief package evenly amongst all the civilians, everybody would have gotten like $90,000. Every single person.
It would be a different world suddenly.
And like, we talk a lot about trickle down when we should be talking about purchasing power. Damon has a follow-up question, quote, comment. My biggest gripe about this whole situation is that our government, which is supposed to be informing the public in some unified fashion, is instead sending misinformation. Other governments have done a much better job of informing their public as to what to do. This goes as far as telling us not to wear masks in the beginning for fear we would buy them all, and then coming back later and saying, yeah, you probably should wear a mask. That period of time where we were told not to hurt us overall. It is sad to me.
His first question, which is somebody who is determined not to wear a mask, it is political for the most part. The guy that I know on my timeline who's running for public office in Montana won't wear a mask, and it's because the virus is fake and it's a liberal, even though it's a global thing. It doesn't matter.
Think the media...
His liberal agenda, the liberal agenda is trying to keep the president from winning, and they're scaring everybody and destroying the economy by keeping us at home to keep Trump from winning.
I think
that's an excuse from somebody who is vehemently anti-mask.
That one guy.
That's a lot of people.
I think that group is smaller than we think it is.
I do too. But they're very vocal.
They're very vocal, and they get in the news because it keeps the people in the blue team thinking that the people in the red team are idiots and that they're the enemy, when it's actually the people that is orchestrating that are the enemy.
Yeah, there's those little memes travel a long way.
Yeah. So yes, there's a vocal person that is literally not wearing a mask because someone wants him to. He's literally like, I'm not going to do it because you guys want me to.
Yeah, and he's very proud of the fact that he works every day with his elderly septuagenarian
smoker dad,
overly smoker dad,
and points that out all the time because he thinks it's fake.
He's so confident that it's fake, and he's just not going to be one of the sheeple people.
Yeah. I know, I grew up, I spent the first 27 years of my life in the quarter of the country, the 25% of the country that's evangelical Christians. I spent the first 27 years of my life in that group, and those people, in general, want to take care of their families, and they want their children to have a healthy, self-expressed life where they're thriving, not just surviving. And they feel like the government enforced isolation and lack of movement is hurting their families and their loved ones and their children and their ability to take care of their communities and the people that they care about. And so it's not that it's not divided evenly. It's not just that every person that wants to open the economy also doesn't want to wear masks. Sometimes it's both.
Yes.
Like, I'm sort of in the both camp. And I worry about talking about my opinions about wearing a mask more than I worried about talking about me being brainwashed as a creationist.
No, because it's hot right now.
It's really hot, and I feel so strongly that anytime someone states their opinion, everybody immediately has an idea of who that person is. They just like, you know, me saying I don't think I should wear a mask. People are gonna immediately start thinking of me as more Republican than they thought I was.
Well, I think it's important to add into this whole thing that we're throwing out here today, that censorship thing from Google. The idea that an entire platform can be taken out if they publish anything that is not by a government source on the topic of COVID is Ministry of Truth 1984 sci-fi. I don't know if last year anybody could ever see that as a thing, and yet
that level of censorship,
and yet it's just gonna glide off the radar.
Right.
You said it, I saw it, we saw it.
This entire service has been shut down by Google because Google is only going to allow apps on their entire platform that have been, we want to talk about COVID, that have been approved by the government or a government organization.
So technically, if we had this podcast on that,
we would have contributed to Podcast Addict getting shut down.
And we would have lost that hosting.
All of those ratings. Like he's facing, you know, a decade's worth of a business that he's built, helping and promoting people and being a host for all these podcasts, all their reviews, all of their ratings, all of their download mounts, all of his ratings.
So last week somebody posted something about the Facebook censorship. So Facebook censored some far right groups that wanted to support the guys that, you know, shot the jogger in Georgia. Far right groups that were 4chan, 8chan, so on, these sort of known troll farm hate sites. And several friends of mine were cheering the censorship of those sites.
Censorship as in nobody gets to see them anymore.
No, they're offline. So I was really a little taken aback because censorship itself is problematic. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, it's fine if it's for somebody else, but eventually it will be you. If you let somebody else get censored that way, you're eroding your ability to have free speech. And even though those people are, in your eyes, egregious and they shouldn't have a platform, it's a private platform. It's not covered by the Constitution. There's a terms of service agreement that they can just terminate you. And when you let them do that to somebody because they're right-wing, I like knowing that there's some right-wing sites because you can go there and you can figure out who they are. You can find out if your neighbor is on them. You know who they are. They're calling themselves out. That's useful. Making them go into the underground, making them go on the dark web, you can't monitor that stuff in there. You don't know what's going on with those folks. If you think they're a danger, you have no way to monitor who they are anymore. And I find that's why I have a friend of mine in town, when I brought up the idea that censorship itself is really dangerous, they started to argue with me and then said, never mind, and deleted me as a friend.
And blocked you on Facebook.
So I don't know if we're still friends in real life, but they just decided that we were not, they censored me.
They decided we're not talking anymore ever.
Yeah, they just said, we're not going to talk anymore on this platform because I want my views unopposed.
Yeah.
So this is the sort of case in point that I couldn't have dreamed of last week. Is that they're going to say you can only have podcasts if they're going to say COVID-19 on them, they have to be approved by the government.
Or a government institution.
That's
really scary.
It's pretty shocking.
You should be scared.
Especially when you look at who's in charge of the government. So the people who were cheering censorship this week, I wonder how they feel about it this week, knowing that they have to have a Trump government approved source to have a podcast talk about the subject matter that we're talking about today on this radio station.
I hope we're not causing long-term problems for KBNF.
Well, we haven't done anything wrong according to, this is freedom of speech here. It's not, we don't have a terms of service agreement.
It's not freedom of speech on Google.
Google is a private entity. They can do whatever they want.
And so is Facebook.
They can do whatever they want.
Right.
They can censor whoever they want.
Right. This might be a good time to say that while the information that Dark and I are presenting is often quite factual and easy for you to find on the internet yourself, our opinions about the information are our own opinions and not those necessarily of KBMF or the people who finance KBMF.
That's right. We're doing this on a public platform.
And you can too.
KBMF is a community-supported resource, a platform for anybody from the community to come in, take the microphone, and share what perspectives they would like to with their community. And we appreciate everybody who's listening online on the private platform
Of Facebook.
as well as our listeners here at KBMF. We're coming up to the top. We got like 15 minutes left.
Yeah, 10 minutes before we have to put on some kind of a smart song.
Long song so we can sterilize the joint.
And clean up all of the electronic gear I hauled in here.
Yes.
So, this is an ongoing conversation. What is the point? You know, a lot of people say, why don't you just wear a mask? Why not just wear a mask? Why not just wear, I think that's what it comes down to.
Right.
I mean,
Why
if we're not
wouldn't you?
being immediately censored or shut down or blocked by our loved ones for suggesting that we should discuss a healthy plan of action,
Mm-hmm.
other than everybody wear a mask and stay home, then the next step is generally, okay, I hear your points, but why not just wear a mask? Like, why don't you just wear a mask? Just wear one. Just stay home for a little while. It's only like a year.
That's what I see that a lot. And how do you feel about that perspective?
I think it's hard to talk about that issue without talking about death and our fear of death. And the idea that the best thing you can do for people is prevent death. So I think it's important to look at all the statistics. You know, like it's hard to talk about. It's not hard as in emotional. I mean hard as in difficult to pin down the things that need to be said. Why don't you just wear a mask? For one, it's not even censored by Google yet. There is a lot of scientific data that says that when a mask is worn improperly or long term, it causes a septic environment in the lungs.
Right.
You're breathing in too much carbon dioxide. You're preventing yourself from encountering natural things in the environment which actually keep your body going. The human body is not actually a separate entity from the environment around it, but we think of it that way because of modern Judeo-Christian ideas that humans are special, made by God, and not part of the world. We are in this world but not of it, when in actual fact your body is literally part of the world. What you breathe in and breathe out makes you or breaks you. Same thing with what you eat.
There was a thing that I saw recently. I don't know if it was in Florida or California, but they COVID tested all the homeless people they could find.
Nothing.
Not one of them had it. You know, these people are
Not social distancing.
They're not social distancing.
They're not wearing masks.
And I don't know how their immune systems would be, except maybe by living on the street and being exposed a lot.
This is
But they weren't even tested with it, not even carrying it.
not even carrying it asymptomatic. No, we don't talk about this enough. We've become a culture long before this COVID thing happened. The U.S. has become this culture of hand washing and sanitizing. It's just become a thing that you do. People are terrified of snot on their babies' faces and worried that they're about their kid going to the school, you know, and like we need to encounter stuff in order to be stronger.
Yeah.
If you just lived in a bubble your whole life, you would immediately be killed by the world when you went out of your bubble. So why not just wear a mask? There's scientific data that the way that civilians are wearing these things that we call masks is actually harming us in the long run.
Or at least are more superficial than effective.
Yes, they are probably either doing nothing or weakening your immune system,
right,
more than they are actually protecting you or someone else.
Now, I would love to see
especially if it's not an N95.
I would love to see the stats on that. I don't know where that information came from, but I would love to see.
Oh gosh, I've read so many articles this week, and unfortunately, with all the times my computer has crashed, I've lost several of my sets of articles. But I will find some information on it and share it in this feed. Okay. Why not just wear a mask?
Why not just wear a mask?
Why not just wear a mask?
You care about me and my God.
The thing that everybody comes back to is the asymptomatic thing. We were told that people can carry coronavirus around for over 2 weeks without ever having any symptoms, and you know why that is because if I'm carrying coronavirus asymptomatically, it means that my immune system is strong enough to be fighting it off. And other people's immune systems are also strong enough to be fighting it off. Some people's immune systems are not strong enough to fight coronavirus off. Those are the people that should be protecting themselves. I do not feel the need currently, with what I know about my body and my health habits, that I need to protect myself from coronavirus. I anticipate that I probably already encountered it earlier this year and have gotten rid of it in my system, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but we don't have access to testing, so.
Right. And so that's kind of the magical, the golden magical thing, is that you might have it without knowing it, and we can't test you to find out if you have it or not, so you better just stay home for your neighbor's sake if you care about them.
Mm.
So why not just wear a mask and stay home? Like, why don't you just wear a mask? Why don't you just wear a mask when you go to the grocery store?
Last time I went to the grocery store, I decided that I care about people. And I do, even though I don't like to admit it, I do care about what people think of me sometimes.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll wear the mask for their sake, not because I think that my bandana is going to save anybody's life, because I might ease their psychological unease.
Which will contribute to a better immune system.
At seeing one of them. And I just felt myself foaming up. My nose started running. I'm having to wipe my nose now because I'm not used to wearing a mask. So now my nose is running. So I did all the things that the CDC was warning against.
You're touching your face way more.
I had an improper mask. And so I ended up touching my face a whole lot more, touching my face, touching my nose, and touching groceries.
Yeah.
I ended up actually probably more dangerous at the grocery store
because you wrapped something around your face.
in reality
Yeah.
than I was, and that was because I didn't have a proper mask. And this is the problem, we don't have proper masks.
Or proper training in how to use them.
Right, so I witnessed myself being a problem, but I could walk out feeling good that nobody thought I was a problem.
And people that saw you felt good about you.
They felt good about me, and I don't like that. I
So-
don't like, that's to me dishonest, and it's part of the public-private thing, and it's posturing for people, and it's faking, and it's fronting, and I need to get a better mask. I don't want to go to the grocery store and freak people out. You know, I don't think I'm protecting them.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go freak them out psychologically.
Right.
I'm okay
I
with
imagine I could
protecting people's fragile psyches.
I could get to the point where I wore a mask so that people felt better. But it you know, having spent the first 27 years of my life doing all of my actions so that the people around me felt
Feel better.
better,
Yeah.
it's really distasteful for me that we now have a countrywide campaign to just do this, even if you don't need it, to make other people feel better.
Even if you don't. Yep.
So,
It's a little culty. It's pretty culty.
and the information has been disseminated in such a way that it makes it seem like, why wouldn't, it's, you know, like, you might carry it without knowing it. It's too bad we can't test you, so you better just keep wearing a mask and stay home. I don't feel like we've gotten to the end of this.
No.
I don't feel like, I
No.
feel dissatisfied. I feel like everything's up in the air and there's still so much more to talk about, and I'm afraid that people are just going to shut down and not just go Google things that they could find out.
Well, it's rough being a person today. I hope folks understand the intention of the show. We want to have bigger dialogues, better dialogues, try to find ways to have a better time with each other and stop demonizing each other. I feel like a big part of our discussion around the mask is political, unfortunately. And that's no place for a medical issue. Politics is no field for a medical issue.
Our feelings were stitched to the mask
Yeah.
almost immediately in
Yeah.
March.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to have an open-minded discussion about
So-
something that you have strong feelings about.
I'd like to clarify too. I don't think that there's some grand conspiracy that planted the seed that we should all fight each other over masks. I feel like once we start doing what we're already inclined to do, which is to demonize anybody who doesn't agree with us, that can be used against us. As long as we're having these discussions, we're not having the more important discussions like humanitizing the eschaton.
I'm so sorry that we missed that
It's
today.
fine. We should be talking to each other more. And I was really shocked a week and a half ago when I saw somebody just blatantly say, I'm dividing my friends group into people who wear a mask and who don't, because that is fundamentalism, that's cult level. And even though her motivations are great and pure, and I'm sure wants everybody to be healthy, that's why she's so adamant about it, it's still fascist.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. that we've come to that the progressive is, the progressive side of politics is expressing so much fascistic language, willingness to censor, willingness to edit,
To block and
willingness
cut
to with us or against us.
Mhm.
That's very fundamentalist, old school Republican stuff. And now I see the left doing it. The I Ching says that you take on the energy and the attributes of that upon which you fight. As long as you are fighting them, being the conservatives or the liberals or the right or the left, you will become more like them. You'll take on that energy. So that's why I wanted to have this discussion today. Is like,
Yeah.
we need to talk about how we're talking.
And
We
the
need to talk about the virus.
last thing that I wanted to say is that I kept forgetting is that like we're not just talking out of our butts. Like we do a lot of research. And I grew up in a medical household and I have taught courses. I have taught courses on germ theory and personal protective equipment. I have taught courses on how viruses spread. Damon just shared an interesting video on how germs spread, and this is why wearing a mask but not sanitizing your phone and your keys after the grocery store
Right.
is ridiculous. Because
Right.
you need to see how these things spread. This is a video that you can look up on YouTube, how to see germs spread experiment coronavirus.
Yes. And
So I know how this stuff works, and that's why it just blows my mind to see people just being like, I better just wear a mask, but nobody's teaching them anything that's actually useful for how to protect their loved ones.
And again, all that is within the zeitgeist of the orthodoxy of germ theory.
Right.
Terrain
Which
theory,
is that things outside your body are bad,
and they're getting you.
instead of that your body has the ability to take care of you if
Or
you
not.
take care of your body correctly. All right, we have to stop.
We gotta stop. Thanks for tuning into your community
So
radio
many
station,
great
supporting the
participations
show.
today.
Sunday Smackdown, I assume they're coming in this evening. I assume they're gonna be live on the radio again. It's your favorite community radio station here in Butte. We'll be back next week with something else that will also make people like us and hate us at the same time.
Maybe we'll talk about censorship.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's a
we'll
good
talk
one.
about QAnon.
Oy, 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 oy.
Do you know about QAnon?
We can talk about both of those things.
Do you have a song for us?
I
Dr.
do. I have something I pulled out that I thought maybe we'd roll out. It's a nice long track to give our time to sanitize the place and get out of here. Thanks for supporting the show, folks.
We love you guys. See you soon.
Microphone or headphones?
Boom. Thanks, guys. We really appreciate you. I know that was tough. And the ones that stuck around are the ones that are already having hard conversations.
That's right.
So be patient with your loved ones who cannot.